Welcome back to the Off-Road Motorsport Zone stage here at 4x4 Expo in Stafford. We've got a programme still to come this afternoon, with plenty more interviews with Henry Webster. And kicking off the afternoon, we've now got Duncan Smith and Holly Evans from the first steps in competition to that top step on the podium. Ultra 4 Europe British 4400 champion 2022. Duncan Smith with some guiding words on the route to the top and the changing design and developments in their cars. Henry.
Gordon, thank you very much. Excellent. Well, yeah, as Gordon said, now joined by Holly Evans and Duncan Smith, just to talk a bit about what you're up to, a little bit about the background and how you got into the sport. So, Holly, first of all, how did you get into off-road motorsport, and what are you up to at the moment?
So I used to trial with my dad when I was about 13, and then just watched like people like Duncan when I was younger, and just always wanted to do it. And then I met my partner at a race. His name's Zach, and then started co-driving for him, and then got myself a car, and then it just grew, really. And
you're hoping to compete this year?
Yeah, so I'll be racing the full UK Ultra 4 Championship in Legends class.
Fantastic. And you've got the car here today. It looks like you've got a little bit of work to do before the start of the season.
Yeah. We've been rebuilding her since last summer, but she'll be there. She'll be ready.
Why are you rebuilding her, Holly?
I had a bit of a bump at a winch challenge, but she's back stronger.
What happened there?
I was like reversing down a hill, winching, and I didn't realise that a bit more line was out, and suddenly the car started sliding because it was muddy, and it made the winch rope snap, and it just fell, and I hit a tree at the and it just ripped my car off, basically. The cage was in, the engine and gearbox moved back. It was a bit.
You were okay?
Yeah.
So safety equipment did its job then?
I was quite upset about my car.
I'm sure you were very upset, yeah.
Yeah, it was good.
But I guess, I mean, that's the thing, these things happen in the sport. Sometimes it's impossible to get it right all the time, and the terrain is such that it's very difficult to make sure you're always on the right side. But rebuild's going well?
Yeah, she's back bigger, stronger. There's a lot of stuff on my car that I didn't think I'd ever have, but yeah, she'll be a solid car this year, I mean.
And you were saying earlier that you're focusing on kind of the axles and suspension and the underpinnings.
Yeah, so I'm staying with a 300 TDI to learn the car, just finish really. The races are pretty tough. As long as she crosses that finish line, I mean, everyone wants to win, but you've got to finish first.
So Duncan, how did you get into the sport?
Oh, I sort of got in the sport by accident, really, because I ended up buying a vehicle that I thought I could flip and make some money on. Ended up taking it to a play day, then ended up taking it to every play day for that whole entire year. Thought, yeah, I'm quite enjoying this, but I'm getting a bit bored. What can I do? Started looking around and discovered winch challenging. So started building a winch challenge car, and it was taking quite a while. So one came up for sale by Ben Murphy, and I ended up buying that and started winch challenging with that. Slowly changed the car over a number of years and sort of started from there, really. So we were sort of doing extreme play days, I suppose you'd call it, to start with. And it all went from there, really. So yeah, that was about 13 years ago.
So I mean, I think that's a common experience for lots of people who might be listening to this, is going out and doing some play days, have a vehicle that they might, generally like to go out and try and see what they can do with. How did the step into actual competitive sport go?
Very scary, the first event we went to. Never done a winch challenge before. So we did actually watch a couple of events before we started competing, just to try and learn the ropes, as it were, a bit of a pun. But so from there we sort of turned up very naive, not really knowing what we're doing. Very scary, suddenly you're hanging on a rope off a tree thinking, what am I doing? But then you sort of get get the idea of it and learn the techniques and how things work and rope lines and things like that. And we discovered we were actually quite good at it. So from there we started doing better and better, and we ended up being on the podium quite a few times. Had a couple of co-drivers over the years, but always been fairly competitive with both co-drivers that I've used, really. And then after a while, you start looking at other things. But the sport did sort of change and evolve from pure winch challenging. You start doing other events that were multidisciplined, so they brought in, you'd be a bit of winching, but then there might be speed sections or timed sections and things like that. So the sport evolved as we were doing the winch challenging. It evolved by itself into other sort of types of sport, if you like, really.
So it wasn't purely a need for speed that has got you into where you are now with a fully spec Ultra 4 car?
No speed at all in winch challenging. In fact, there's normally a speed limit, so we weren't allowed to speed. But again, that's when they changed. We started doing speed timed sections and suddenly discovered, I actually quite like going fast. And the diesel was not particularly fast, but it was fast enough. But yes, again, that's where it developed. And when we built the current car we've got now, we moved away from a diesel and straight to a V8. So we went from 150 horsepower to 500 horsepower, which was a bit of a steep learning curve, to say the least.
What was the hardest thing to learn in that?
Not to use the throttle pedal as a switch. It's probably the hardest thing to, with 150 horsepower, you're either on or you're off it. With 500, you can't do that because things go bang, or you crash.
Bit more subtlety required.
Exactly, yeah.
So you were telling me earlier you started out in an Overland, which is a French...
Overland, yes, an Overland A3, which is a little French 4x4 with a Peugeot 1.9 diesel in it. That was the thing I sort of thought I was going to flip, but ended up liking it so much. I kept it. In fact, I've still kept it. We've cut the body off it and made it into a little four-seater buggy now, which is very different. But yeah, that's how we started, really. And then from there, we bought the Land Rover-based Challenge truck with a 300 TDI, which we upgraded to a TGV. And then again upgraded the axles to Ashcroft Force 9s. Then we put fitted coilovers. The car just evolves over a period, which is how most people's cars do. That you start off what you can afford, and then you just add more to it as you can afford it and improve the vehicle. So a lot of people start with maybe a Class 1 car with only one winch, and they work their way up because it makes it more affordable than buying a complete car for tens of thousands of pounds.
And so did the current car start from a clean sheet of paper, or...?
The current car is basically, it was built to look like the old car, which is why it's still Series 1. It looks, people still think it's the old car. People go, I saw this car 5 or 6 years ago, going, no, it's only 3 years old, so you didn't. But we knew we wanted a two-wheeler frame, we knew we wanted, we were going to fit a 606 diesel in it originally, but then we fitted the V8 instead. But we started off with a Range Rover supercharged 4.2 in it, but we had issues with that, so we ended up with an LS that we've got in it now. But we wanted to save weight, but ironically the car's actually heavier than the other car used to be.
So Holly, you've done quite a bit of co-driving as well as driving. Do you think that's a good way into the sport?
It's definitely a cheaper way, because you just let the driver smash the car up and then just walk away from it.
Yeah, and you learn an awful lot still about how the events work.
Yeah, so I actually prefer co-driving in winch challenge, and I just want to race to be a driver racing, because winch challenge, the co-driver does a lot of the work, like you're out the car, you're running around. But with racing, the co-driver kind of just sits there and shouts directions, and the driver knows the track after the first or second lap, and then just kind of hold on and hope for the best.
I mean, in winch challenges, very, very much the co-driver often who can win or lose the event.
There's a lot of pressure on a co-driver in winch challenge. Like, you don't really realise it until after. I don't really think about the pressure. I just think about keeping the driver happy and doing what they want, really. Just doing as I'm told.
And so when you started out trialling, was that in a standard road car, or what were you doing then?
So I did the pay and play days. My dad had a standard 90 Land Rover, I used to just sit and steer as like a 7-year-old. And then my dad did trialing. I used to just watch him. And there were some junior championships that came out. And you had to be 15 to compete, but I was 13. But they gave me a trial run, and they let me compete at 13. They lowered the age for me. And then when I hit about 15, I got pushed forward to do the nationals, the UK Tyro nationals, and I got second place.
Fantastic.
And then my dad bought a pickup Defender 90 because we had a van 90, and obviously it's a lot of panels to hit. And then I went back at 16 and I won it, and then just got a CCV vehicle after when I was 18, and started doing CCV trials in a 4.2 V8. And then I met my partner, and he had a workshop, and then...
That's kind of useful thing.
Yeah.
So, and those trials, were you doing it with a local club, or?
Yeah, so I did it with a club called Anglican. I'm from Buckinghamshire. It was a Buckinghamshire club. Yeah, my dad still competes with them, but I've just moved up a bit.
That's a club with a very long history. It goes back a long way. My father used to compete with them as well, and I'm hoping that I'll get out with them maybe a bit later in the year with my trialer. So I'm just making my first steps into CCV, not something I've ever really done before. So
it doesn't feel, so when you step from RTV to CCV, it doesn't feel like a big jump compared to like Tyro to RTV, because obviously you're in a full cage and you've got harnesses, and I found that when you have a harness, you feel safe because it's
feel a lot more fearless.
Yeah.
Well, and have you driven any speed events yet? Is it still to come? So that's what's in store for you in Combe Quarry in a few weeks' time or months' time.
April will be my first speed event, which I'm nervous, but...
You've co-driven speed events though, Holly, haven't you?
Yeah, I've co-driven quite a few. See how it goes.
And are you likely to be on the start line for that event as well, Duncan?
All being well, we should be there as well, yeah. We're hoping to do all the Ultra 4 British events this year.
Much to do with the car to get to that point?
There's still a fair bit to do. We did quite a lot of the prep just to bring it to the show, but there is still quite a list of stuff that we do want to carry out on the car before we start racing it, yeah.
And are there things you're changing for this year, or is it just checking through, maintaining? And
there's not really any changes for this year because we're concentrating on building a new car as well at the moment, so it's just more prepping this car to, so we can actually race it, get it race ready. So there's no changes from last year, really.
Can you just tell us a bit about the car? Just talk us through what it is and.
So it's a full tubular frame. Obviously, it's Series 1 looking. We've got a Defender cab built into the frame as well, but it's got a LS2, so it's 500 horsepower LS2. It's got a 6-speed auto gearbox in it, which we control manually, and then it's got a single-speed transfer box from Synchro gearboxes. The axles that we're using are Cerny cases from Italy, modified Y61 diffs to 35 spline. We run the spool in the back, so no differential at all. And then, what else? We use Spider Track wheel bearings and knuckles on the front, which are from America. So the axles are very hybrid, the whole car's hybrid, which is why we're Team Hybrid, because there's no standard parts on the car really. So it seems quite an appropriate name when we started. I think that's pretty much it really. We run a GP100 on the front. Depending on events, sometimes we run one on the back as well. If we do like the 150 event, there's a bit of winching and punches to get, but generally Ultra 4 only a winch on the front.
And the spool's not a problem in the fast sections?
Spool's not a problem at all when you've got 500 horsepower. You just drift the car.
Just learn to drive it with the...
Just drive it aggressively and it doesn't make any difference. I can brake a diff just by using my right foot, so if I run a spool, it's less likely to break.
So they're as much for strength as it is as a traction aid or anything else?
It's to make the car more reliable. We've done so many diffs, and obviously Ultra 4 we have to drive rocks sometimes. So if you snag a wheel, even with a locker in, If you give it a little bit too much right foot, something's going to pop. Whereas with the spooling, we find it just tends to climb out and much better. Again, it's learning to drive the car, which for 500 horsepower is a lot. You've got to be careful. You've got to feather the throttle rather than just boot it. So yeah, that was quite steep. That was probably the hardest thing to learn for me.
And I imagine you've been giving some advice to Holly as she prepares for
Yeah,
her
I try and help
first
Holly.
event.
Holly's actually driven that car, and she got faster and faster when she was driving it. We do a charity event at the Billing Off-Road Show every year. So if you want to come and have a ride in the car, please come to Billing. Sorry, cheap ad there. But Holly drove it for one day last year, and she was getting faster and faster as the day went on. And we've actually fitted a sway bar on the front now, so the car's even more stable. So it will be faster still. So yeah, so she has driven a V8. She knows what it's all about. Her dream now on her Christmas list is always a V8, I believe.
So the 300 TDI should be a pussycat after that, presumably.
Maybe.
Well, I mean, that sounds like being thrown in the deep end if ever I heard it, being thrown into a 500 horsepower monster.
I will admit I was terrified.
You did well though, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, Duncan took me out for a lap first, and I was sat in the passenger seat holding the seat thinking, oh my God, this is terrifying. But
My driving has that effect on most of my co-drivers.
I don't know, you just kind of get in a zone and you seem to, I don't know, you just get in a zone and then you seem to know what you're doing, and then everything else is, it doesn't matter. It's just you in that car and just drive, and it's the best feeling ever.
Oh, I think that's exactly it. It's once you've had the experience that you've had and done the trials and everything that you've done, you're in a position where you know what the cars are going to be doing. You get very natural into it, just pick up how it should be driven.
I'm hoping in the future I will have a faster engine, but slow and steady and make my way to the top, fingers crossed.
Yeah, in my experience, the people who've gradually built up speed over time tend to be the ones who've come out the fastest and certainly the most consistent. People who jump in at the deep end often really struggle, so I think I can fully recommend that as a route.
Yeah, we've seen that even at Ultra 4 events. You know, there's people just running a TD5 who are almost as quick as the V8s. They're actually quicker than some of the V8s because people aren't actually used to them yet. So you don't have to have a V8 and a high power car to actually be competitive. Well, in any, you know, not just Ultra 4, but all the disciplines that we do really. You know, winch challenge especially, that you don't, V8s aren't really that good for winch challenge, so you're better off with the diesel anyway. But so, you know, it's not all about the car sometimes, it's about the crew skill. So you don't have to have the best car to actually win. I remember when we started doing bigger events from the winch challenging that we started, and we started doing the Welsh Extreme and things like that. You turn up and it's very daunting when I think the first Welsh Extreme we did was 2015, and there was 46 cars or something there, and you're walking around the pits and all you can see are these shiny cars, and you think, oh dear, we're out of our depth here. And it was just amazing. But then you realise there's us with our beaten up old car. We actually finished second, I think, that year. So it was like, you can't be put off by the machinery that's at an event. You've got to just do your own race and not be intimidated by everybody else, because you just run your own race and do your own thing and come out at the end and you probably do better than you ever possibly imagined.
So Holly, you obviously aspire to a V8 or something more powerful. What are your ambitions with the sport? Where do you want to go?
My biggest goal is to get an LS in my car and get it to King of the Hammers in America. I have no idea how we get it there or how long, but it will be there one day. And hopefully beat Duncan.
I look forward to that day.
Sounds like one of the ways to get to King of Hammers is to win the class this year, as they're offering shipping out to King of the Hammers. So is that even remotely a realistic option for you?
Right now, probably not, because it's just one small part of the package. Like, America's not like close. Like, I've got to think about flights, and I do not stand a chance in a 300 TDI.
It's all about consistency. If you're going to approach it the way that you say you're going to approach it, which is to get through the events. I think you're in a very, very strong position, because that really is the best way to approach these.
I think it goes back to what I said. It's not about necessarily. I think there's going to be a lot of people going in there thinking that we're going to win, and they'll drive the cars too hard and they'll all break them. So if you go in there and you're consistent at every round and score reasonable points, I think you'll probably do better than you think, because everyone's going to be trying too hard because they just see the prize at the end of it. And I think it's going to be a very interesting year from that point of view. There's going to be a lot of broken cars, people trying too hard. It's very easy to overdrive your car and break it.
Absolutely. We see it time and time again in all disciplines of off-road motorsport, that if you try too hard, often come unstuck. And I think, the slow and steady approach is absolutely the right way to focus, and focus on the reliability, focus on consistency in getting the way through. How about you, Duncan? What are your ambitions?
Well, we're in 4400 this year. Like I said earlier, we're in the middle of building a car. We're hoping to have that done, ready for the first round of Ultra 4 in April. So if it proves reliable straight out the box, which is a big ask really, we will be trying to win the 4400, probably just the British Championship. We might do a round abroad. We'll have to see. Depends how the car goes. So if we win the prize, then we obviously will be going to the Hammers, but that's a long way off yet, and there's a lot of people going for the prize. So we're just going to play it by ear, and I think we're just going to run our races and see how we go over the course of the year and see where we end up. Because I think if you focus too much on the prize, I don't think you'll actually come anywhere. Obviously someone's got to win it, but it's more likely than not going to be someone expected to win it, because everyone's going to be trying too hard.
And the new car very different to the current one?
The new car is a monster compared with that one. You think that's a monster, the new one's just going to be mad. We're running Portals, 42-inch tyres, 700 horsepower. It's going to be absolutely ridiculous, yeah.
Okay, so learning curve all over again.
Hopefully not as steep as learning that one. So, yeah, it's only a couple of hundred horsepower more, but, yeah, the Portals and bigger tyres, and it's going to be quite a thing to learn again. I think it's going to be much faster than we think it is. That car's not slow by any stretch of the imagination, but I think the new one's going to be even faster still. But there's some ridiculously fast cars out there, especially in Europe. Jim Marsden's new car is ridiculously fast. So, yeah, there's lots of people to beat. Nothing's a foregone conclusion. It's racing, isn't it? So, you haven't won till you've crossed the line.
So, Holly, have you got any advice for anyone who'd like to get involved in off-road motorsport?
My advice would be, don't look at the top people. Like, obviously, everyone will just be like, everyone will look at Duncan's car and be like, I can't do it because I don't have the money to get a machine like that. But you can. It's just being smart about it.
Like I said, though, you build up to that. There are a few people that go out and spend 100 grand on a car. My first car was 5 grand, and I've slowly built up to what I've got now. And that's the only way you can do it, unless you're a lottery winner or very, very wealthy. But then if you're very, very wealthy, you buy the car, but you can't drive it. So I've seen that before as well. Most of the best drivers start with the poorest equipment, and they improve their driving with the poorest equipment, which makes them better when they do get a better car.
Absolutely. And any advice from you, Duncan?
What, for Holly generally, or everybody?
For Holly specifically, or indeed anyone else who wanted to start out in the sport?
Holly specifically, just do what you're doing and get seat time in the car. You can't beat seat time in the car, and get experience. You're still very, very young, and you need experience. Experience will get you further than having the best equipment, because you have to learn how to drive it properly, because the kit might not be the best. So, I've seen quite poor cars win over top quality cars all the time. And as to anybody else who wants to get into the sport, come and watch, chat to all the competitors. We're generally very friendly, and if you want some advice, just ask. We've all been there, so.
Great, thank you very much. Well, it's fantastic to meet you both, and thank you for your contribution today. Really enjoyed it, and all the best for this year. Good luck. Hope it goes well, and I hope to see you both out in the American desert sometime soon.
We hope so too. Thanks, Henry.
Thank you.
So thank you very much, Duncan and Holly, for that insight into the route to success for Europe. Still to come this afternoon, we'll be back at 1:30 with Max Cook and Henry Smith on the future of off-road motorsport. So we'll see you back here in about half an hour at 1:30.